Hello everyone, and today we'll be talking about elections and voting behavior. Let's start with the basics now. There are three types of elections. They are primary, general, and elections on specific policies. Let's begin with specific policies first. Currently, there is no constitutional provision for specific policy questions to be answered by a national vote. But there are two ways to get these items on a ballot. One way is through a referendum, which is a state-level method of direct legislation that gives voters a chance to approve or disapprove legislation. The other way is initiative petition, which is a process only permitted in some states whereby voters may put proposed changes in the state constitution to a vote if sufficient signatures are obtained through petition calling for such a referendum. A famous example of initiative petition is California's Proposition 13, which in 1978 put a limit on the rise of property taxes in California. Now, on to the next. It is primary elections. A primary election is a nominating election in which field of candidates that will run in a general election is chosen. Victory in a primary election usually results in a candidate being nominated by a political party for the general election. There are several types of primaries, but we'll talk about one: presidential primaries. Today, most of the delegates to the Democratic and Republican national conventions are selected in presidential primaries, in which voters in a state go to the polls and vote for a candidate or delegate pledged to a candidate. For example, in 2008, Barack Obama and John McCain won the presidential primaries for their respective parties and went on to the general election. General elections are regular elections of candidates for office, as opposed to a primary election. An example would be presidential election. So now that we have a basic understanding of elections, let's talk about voting. Over 2 centuries of American electoral history, federal laws have expanded suffrage, which is the right to vote. In the 1800s, only property-owning white males over the age of 21 were allowed to vote. Women and African Americans didn't have that right to vote. Now, almost anyone can vote now. Male or female, white or non-white, rich or poor, as long as they're 18 or older. But there are also 2 exceptions: non-citizens and convicted criminals. No state permits immigrants to vote. Almost all states deny prisoners the right to vote. About half extended the ban to people on parole, and to states impose a lifetime ban on convicted felons. Even though the right to vote has been extended, proportionately, fewer of those eligible have chosen to vote. 1896 had the highest turnout rate with 80% compared to 2008 where the turnout rate was only 61%. Let's be realistic. When over 125 million people vote in a presidential election, the chance of one vote affecting the outcome is very, very small. In fact, the chances are so small that it is more likely for you to get struck by lightning. So not only does your vote probably not make a difference to the outcome, but it also takes up your time. You have to spend time getting informed, making the decision who to vote for, and then going to the polls. So you might be saying to yourself, why bother? Well, according to economist Anthony Downs, rational people vote if they truly feel that policies of one party is proposing will bring more benefits to them than the other party. So basically, if people see actual differences between parties, they will vote. However, if they see no difference, they won't vote. Another reason why many people vote is that they believe in political efficiency. So who actually votes? First demographic is education. People with higher than average education have a higher rate of voting than those with less education. Those with a higher education can decipher major differences between candidates. Number 2 is age. Older people are far more likely to vote than younger people. Younger people are less likely to be registered, but analyzing turnout patterns among registered voters show wide differences by age. For example, in 2006, Iowa's Secretary of State reported that only 22% of registered voters under the age of 25 actually voted, compared to the 72% over the age of 65. Number 3 is race. African Americans and Hispanics are underrepresented among voters. This can probably be explained by their below average levels of education. African Americans and Hispanics with high levels of education actually have a higher turnout rate than whites. Number 4 is gender. Women used to be discouraged from voting, but now they actually participate in elections more than men. The 5th demographic is marital status. People who are married are more likely to vote than those who aren't, and this pattern is true among all age groups. And the 6th, government employment. Government employees usually know more government and have more understanding, which implies them to high levels of participation. So why does this matter? If you possess traits of non-voters like being young, why does this matter? If you possess traits of non-voters like being young, single, or poorly educated, then politicians are less likely to pay attention to your interests, whether you vote or not. But if you possess traits of a voter like the elderly, married, and well-educated, then your interests are more likely to be heard, since politicians know that their fate is in your hands, the voter. So what does this all mean? Your vote does matter. What influences Americans' decisions to vote? Well, as I said earlier, most people vote for the candidate that they agree with more. So when a politician is elected, they justify their actions by claiming public support for their policies. This is known as the mandate theory of elections. Politicians favor this theory more than political science do. Political science focuses on 3 major elements of voter decisions. party identifications are crucial for votes. They provide a perspective through which voters can see politics. People choose a party they agree with and do not pay attention to every issue but rely on their party to guide them. Number 2 is voter evaluation of candidates. Since the Kennedy and Nixon debate in 1960, it is known that a favorable image is needed. Political psychologists Sean Rosenberg and Patrick McCafferty found that when good pictures are substituted for bad ones, a candidate's voting gettability is higher. Number 3 is policy voting. Policy voting occurs when people base their choices in an election on their own issue preferences. Party voting, candidate evaluation, and policy voting all play a role in elections. They are the main factors affecting voter decisions. Once voters make a decision, it is not as simple as counting the ballots. Instead, the complex process of determining electoral college votes begins. The electoral college is very controversial. It is the members of the electoral college, not the people who actually cast determining votes for president and vice president. The electoral college was created by the Constitution. Many voters and political scientists oppose its use. The founders wanted the president to be chosen by the nation elite, not directly by the people. They led decisions as how the electors are chosen to each state, but since 1828, political practice has been for electors to vote for the candidate who won the popular vote in their state. This is how they work. Each state has as many electoral votes as it has senator and representatives. State parties select state of electors. Each state has winner-take-all systems except for Maine and Nebraska. Electors vote as a block, whether the winning gets 35% of the vote or 75% of the popular vote in the state. Electors meet in December after the November election and then mail votes to the vice president, also known as the president of the Senate. Vote is counted when new congressional sessions open in January. If no candidate receives an electoral college majority, then the election goes into the House of Representatives, which must choose from among the top 3 electoral vote winners. A significant aspect of balloting in the House is that each state delegation has 1 vote. That means that the 1 rep from Wyoming has an equal say with the 53 from Cali. Elections are the centerpiece of democracy. Few questions are more important for understanding American government than this. Do elections matter? Under the right conditions, elections can influence public policy, and policy outcomes can influence elections. Elections also legitimize the power of the state, thereby making it easier to expand the scope of government. Thank you.